Alright guys, TacticalRabbit here, and it's double upload time. Today I want to talk about this move, Priestahh and Crowder, of course, going to 100 Thieves with Fero moving to the bench. Typically, as soon as I was about to upload yesterday's video, it got officially announced, which I was talking about the rumour of it happening, so I thought today I'll talk about the actual change, what I think about it, why it may not be a fantastic long-term solution, and some other things along the way. And then the second video I wanted to talk about all the other substitute changes that we have, because there's a lot of things that have been announced over the last day or so, and I'll go through all the ones we know so far and their potential implications. So that's what I'm going to do today. Like if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always. Thanks for the love on the last video, like last couple of days it's been doing great. Regardless, firstly I wanted to go once again to this bloody handbook, because I have misinterpreted one of the lines here, and I think I can be forgiven for doing so, because it is very ambiguous. I thought there might be some sort of loophole that 100 Thieves are exploiting, but it's just a wording here. So, teams are only permitted to make a substitute request for an entire week of regular season play. Teams will not be permitted to field a substitute from match to match. Now, what I thought this meant, maybe a bit of confirmation bias on my part, I thought it meant that, okay, you can choose a substitute for an entire week, but you can't do it for like multiple weeks. You can't do it, from match to match, from week to week. But what it actually means is, before the week of season play has begun, you have to say whether you want to use your substitute or whether you want to use your regular player. And then you can do that every single week. So effectively, you can use your substitute for the entire 4 weeks before the roster change period comes into play on the 1st of March. Basically what this means is that teams right now can make one roster change, and that's effectively what 100 Thieves have done. They've decided, okay, we'll put Fero on the bench, on the substitute bench, and then we'll get Priestahh in as our new starting player, and effectively work it like that. So that's what they've done, and it makes sense. 100 Thieves definitely a team that arguably needed a roster change. So this is the new lineup. They've decided to bring in Priestahh to the squad. Priestahh joins us on loan from FaZe for the remainder of the 2019 season. With his addition, Fero will move to a substitute role. Will be competing in the CWL Pro League with Priestahh on the starting roster. So definitely a change that people would have predicted. Now, Fero being the one to leave is an interesting one. Priestahh coming in, I don't think a lot of people are doubting this at all. The role situation is the very interesting one, considering Priestahh is going to be using a Sorg on this team, in addition to Enable. So Enable and Priestahh will be the Sorgs. Kenny will be allowed to use his Maddox full time with Slasher alongside him, and then Octane will be like the turret AR. Now, it's very interesting because this whole thing about Kenny the entire season not really wanting to run the Sorg, preferring the Maddox, and what it seems like is that 100 Thieves have decided, they've decided between Kenny and Fero, basically. You have to keep Enable because he seems like kind of the glue to the team, and he's also an SMG, which they are lacking very much so on this squad. Priestahh coming in as the second one is 100% what they needed, and with Kenny being unwilling to really run that SMG, and with Fero definitely being better with the Maddox, they've decided, okay, we're going to keep Kenny, we're going to get out Fero, which is not necessarily a bad pick by any means, but it's super controversial one. I'm sure you guys in the comments will be divided whether it was the correct decision to get rid of Fero or they should have got rid of Kenny, because I think those are really the two targets right now, looking for that heavier SMG play. Whether this is enough to make this team championship contenders in the long run, I'm not yet convinced, but it may well very much be helped by the addition of James Replays Crowder, or James Crowder, whatever the hell nowadays, onto this team as the coach. This is, in my opinion, like the best pickup they could have possibly have done. Once again, he's on loan from FaZe Clan, and yeah, it's interesting. Zuma did tweet this, which is a fantastic photo of them from Champs, and basically he's implying that, they're going to be off the team. I think he's saying that they're on loan, but I don't really think they're on loan. I think they will join 100 Thieves sooner or later. Maybe they're on loan now before they get contract situations sorted out, but soon enough they will be 100 Thieves players and coaches. And yeah, Crowder, he's a fantastic player with a mind for the game, but Black Ops 4 hasn't really suited him, and when he's been playing it on FaZe, the statistics speak for themselves, So as a coach, this can be really, really helpful for them, and I think he'll do a fantastic job in diagnosing what their problems should be, because on the previous team, that 5-man lineup, one thing I like about this change, getting rid of Fero, now I'm not necessarily saying yet that Fero was the man that should have gone, but it's one less ego on the team, as far as I'm concerned. That team is full of egos. Fero definitely has one, Kenny definitely has one, Octane definitely has one, Slasher definitely has one, and Abel's kind of the chillest guy on the team, I would say. So, you know, you get rid of one ego, you bring in Priestahh, who's a very chill guy, and then you bring in Crowder, who is a super chill guy, and it will be a fantastic addition, I think, in terms of being able to give some input and finding out what the issues are with this team. You'll have Crowder, Slasher, and Enable now communicating in terms of like the team voice and the leadership voice, which should be a really big deal for them. And of course, prior experience working with Priestahh, molding him into this team can only benefit them. And I think this is my favourite thing about the pickup. I think the Priestahh pickup is fantastic. He's a superb player. I think the potential of this team probably goes up now, especially considering the SMG presence which is necessary right now in Call of Duty, and you really need good Sorg players, and Priestahh proved he can do that at the PLQ, so he definitely should be an addition to them. It's whether Kenny can start performing on the Maddox, which is the real question. So before I go on to my personal opinions on it, I wanted to go through some Twitter drama, I guess, between some of the pros, because everyone was talking about Kenny, really. So this is what Accuracy says in reply to Fero. So this is what it was tweeted that I mentioned yesterday. Backstab so many times I started walking backwards. Lamar says, you saw how they operated in the off-season. You should have been walking backwards since then. So, of course, when they went on to 100 Thieves, Fero, Kenny, and Enable, you know, when they went on to the 100 Thieves squad, Accuracy was the guy left in the dust, and now he's on Splice, balling out of control already in the league. So, that's rather cool. But yeah, that was a tweet from him. Then you have this series of tweets between Clayster and Nadeshot. So Nade tweets out, Fero is an incredible player who has a long and successful career ahead of him, but the team felt that Kenny will return to 2018 MVP form with an aggressive Maddox in hand. We're hoping this move will change the dynamics of our players' roles on the team. Time to get to work. Clayster says, when your main sub won't run a sub so you get dropped, tough scenes. So implying that Fero's been dropped because Kenny wants to use the Maddox. So there's some exchanges here between Nadeshot and Clayster. I'll just let you guys read it out. And yeah, Clayster definitely was getting the communities back in these exchanges because people really don't seem to like Kenny's guts right now. And part of that may be these follow-up tweets that I'm about to go through. So if you haven't finished reading through this yet, pause the video, do whatever you like. Actually, before we get into the Kenny tweets, this is something from Cap, who says that Fero is good enough to probably get on a team, but his situation is the scariest thing to me as far as job security goes. Wins an event, which was Stage 2 playoffs last year, where in my opinion he was the MVP. Fero is a super talented player. I think people maybe have lost that aspect considering his, you know, this team has been struggling, but Fero is a super talented player, and getting rid of him for Priestahh, okay, maybe it's a similar differential in skill. The roles definitely make more sense going into an SMG, but this is a player that should not be overlooked going forwards because he was really, really good at the latter half of last year on that TK lineup. Gets second at Champs, everything looking up for his career, then he gets dropped without a team to go to only 5 months later. And yeah, Cap says nobody even thinks Fero is a bad player. He was just the odd man out on a super talented yet underperforming roster that needed a change, which I agree with pretty much in its entirety. Now let's go on to the next thing. This was a tweet that Kenny quickly deleted in reply to Clayster. I don't want to read it out. You can read it yourself. It's there for all to see. And then these were some further exchanges. So, you know, after Kenny came at him and they deleted his tweet, Clayster then went back at him and said that me commenting on a major roster change in the professional scene that I'm associated with such drama. And then Kenny goes on about subtweeting. And then, yeah, so Clayster and Kenny go at it a bit here on Twitter. And Kenny ends it with this funny statement. You also seem to be simply minded, so I won't explain anymore. Oh my word, man. What is going on? Kenny is not making any friends in the Call of Duty community right now. Let's put it that way. And yes, okay, he was the player of the year last year, definitely the rookie of the year, however you want to describe it. But right now, he's not making very many friends. And this is part of the reason why people don't want him on the team as a whole in the community. And a lot of people think that it should have been Kenny the one to get dropped or at least benched instead of Ferocities. So let's go through some of their placings real quick. This is at the Pro League qualifier. They came 4-2 to qualify at the top of the pool. They did lose to the Pittsburgh Knights and Midnight, which were surprising losses, but they definitely turned it around towards the end, kind of the 100 Thieves you expected to see. But again, against the pro teams, you know, it still might be looking pretty slow for them. And then at Vegas, they came top 12. They had a pretty tough run of things. They came third in their pool after losing to E United and Team Sween. They got massively 3-0'd by Team Sween. And then they beat G2 and then they lose to LG. So top 12 at the first event, just about qualified for the Pro League. For a team of this caliber, a change was definitely needed. I think this is a step in the right direction in terms of play styles for sure. And the team has chosen Kenny over Fero, which honestly I think is justified. Like, as much as people seem to hate Kenny right now, he was the best player of last year. And as Nadeshot said in one of the tweets that we just looked at to Clayster, the PPSH of last year is definitely similar to a Maddox this year than the Sorg is. Now, I'm not saying that it doesn't mean that the best players in the world can't adapt to that. Like a guy like Zero, for example, he was the main assault rifle in Infinite Warfare when they won Stage 1 playoffs, when Splice won Stage 1 playoffs. Now he's using a Sorg and he's dominating with it, you know? The best players can definitely adapt to different weapons, and the best SMGs across time have always adapted to different SMGs, even if, you know, the Sorg in this game is very much different to what the PPSH was last year. But then again, if Kenny thinks he's going to be a much better player with the AR in hand, and I think even back in Advanced Warfare he was not purely an ASM1, I think he was using the BAL a fair bit there as well. So doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be at his best with an SMG, and they trust clearly in his talents to get back to that MVP form. And, you know, dropping Kenny is such a scary thing to do, right? Because you drop Kenny, you don't know he's going to go to another team. The team's going to figure out how to put him in his best possible position, and then he's going to be dropping 1.2s again. And that is really the scary thing for 100 Thieves right now. And I think it kind of makes sense, the fact that they've decided to keep him, especially in that they're getting a coach onto the team as well, that hopefully for their sake can figure out some of the issues and decide, okay, where exactly do we need to put our pieces? Because look at this squad, man. There are so many talented players on this team, and they've been doing decent so far in the season, but they really need to get put into the right slot. And Slasher seems to have found a much more comfortable role recently with the Maddox in hand. Octane, of course, with that ICR, like he's not missing a bullet, is he? And yeah, Priestahh and Enable leading the line with Kenny. You know, Kenny needs to be super aggressive if he's going to use the Maddox. And it really is on him now to prove himself, I feel. If he can't prove himself in the next few weeks, this is not a long-term solution by any means. The only reason why I think it might last the test of time is Crowder on the team to bring things together. But a one-person change, I'm not sure is enough right now, especially if they keep underperforming, because I cannot see this team flipping a switch and being a top team all of a sudden. They may be better in the first few weeks of the Pro League than they would have been without, but unless Kenny starts performing, you may really need to heavily consider swooping up some other players on this team further down the line if the ego situation, which is definitely an issue on this team, continues to manifest itself going forwards. Added into the fact that often in Call of Duty we find that as the year goes on, the aggressive players are more and more prevalent towards the future. Like, as players understand exactly how to play the game, you know, the SMGs, they come more and more dominant throughout the season. We saw it even this season, right? The first couple weeks of play, people were just exclusively using the Maddox. Like, there was barely any SMGs on the map at all, and now the Sorg is pretty much running the meta. So as time goes on, the Sorg is going to become an increasingly more prominent weapon, and having, you know, relatively slow players in Slasher and Octane on your team, and even Enable, like, he's a pretty slow for an SMG. Kenny's going to have to really step up his aggression with the Maddox, and, you know, Priestahh is going to be an absolutely wonderful player on this team. I can be sure of it, but I'm not sure as time goes forward and as the meta in the game changes, whether this team is quite good enough and has all the pieces there to be a super aggressive team that can just compete with the best. Maybe in recent future they'll be okay, but for the long term, throughout the length of the season, I'm not sure I see it happening to its best potential. So anyway, like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new as always. Be really interested to hear your thoughts on this as always in the comment section below. I'm sure you'll have very interesting ones, and yeah, it'll be very, very interesting discussion as always. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Oh my god, and there it is.
Oh, what? Let's fucking go. That's nice.
Easy play.